What happens when humans get all they could ever need from a god? Their needs will be replaced by wants. Wants that know no bounds and will cause them to take more and more from a now angry deity. But as the dancing samurai spirit, so, it is your duty to rage against the encroaching darkness in the form of the Seethe, an assortment of yokai that look so heinous I feel like I need a shower by just looking at them. And Kunitsu Gami allows you to do it in such a way that it'll carve itself into your mind and make you want to see this through until the end. Kunitsu Gami Path of the Goddess is a brand new IP by Capcom that released on the 19th of July in 2024 and is a tower defense action strategy game with, I guess, RPG and hack and slash elements in which you and every NPC you command, as well as the princess you protect, are the towers. In this game, you take the role of So, a spirit summoned by the shrine maiden Yoshiro to aid her in the task of purging the curse and yokai plaguing the people of the mountain while dancing on the graves of the yokai you just defeated. And I mean that quite literally. For you see, So is not a regular swordsman. They don't use regular attacks like a samurai or the like would. No, instead, So uses sword dances to banish the demons and to purge the corruption around the villages you move through. But before you're able to unleash your sick dance moves on the yokai, you must first prepare for the battle to come, as you are not the only traveler on this journey to save the people. You accompany the shrine maiden Yoshiro to aid her in defeating the cope and Seethe made manifest by the mountain goddess. But since Yoshiro herself has no combat experience, and looks like she could fall over if you looked at her the wrong way, it is your duty to defend her and make sure she's undisturbed while purging the corruptory gates that spew out the yokai. So, you need to set up traps, free villagers from the demonic cocoons, and gather what looks like heart candy to induct the villagers into your little defensive force and clear a path for Yoshiro. And here's where the game truly shines. As you can see, the task at hand is very simple, at least on paper, which is quite fitting as So is a very simple character. They were summoned to do something and are here to accomplish that very thing. That is reflected in their movesets and upgrades. Your base moveset consists of 4 combos, a block, and a dodge. The combos differ in just one thing, that being how often you hit the light attack button before you end it with a heavy attack button. But the simplicity doesn't really mean it is a shallow combat loop. While this base moveset never changes, you can augment it as the game goes on with your upgrades and gear. At first, you will unlock a special move that is either a damaging move that will also heavily deplete the enemy resist gauge, which is like the one thing you need to actually worry about, and support moves that will aid the villagers in some way, be it enhancing their damage output or even sacrificing yourself to revive your allies. Later, you gain an entire upgrade menu, which allows you to unlock an alternate sword dance that focuses more on damage rather than versatility, a bow with various types of arrows, new commands for your command menu, or more slots for your special moves and attribute augmentations, such as getting more damage the more hard candy you stuff into your mouth, or just straight up dancing non-stop and leaving all the work to the villagers. Yeah, some of these get weird. While these don't get too out of hand with game-changing effects, they do matter in slightly augmenting the ease with which you can hold back the hordes of demons. And the feedback the game gives you during parries, hits, and dodges is intoxicating. The impaling sound your blade makes while performing a punishing strike on a stunned enemy that sounds like you drove a stake made out of tungsten through a metal block, or the impact frames for whenever you slice through swathes of enemies, the shots ringing out from the gunmen to the incinerating bodies of the yokai you have bested, is cut from the same cloth as the feedback you would get in games like Monster Hunter or Street Fighter. This simplicity in the way you can enhance your character keeps things fresh, but it never feels overwhelming. If you equip some things that may turn out to be the wrong choices for this one specific stage, you can even swap them out, at the cost of either failing or restarting the stage. But one person alone cannot hold back the servants of an angered god on their own. They need to be as strategic as possible to use whatever they can to its full potential to gain an advantage. Here, the tactical gameplay in every stage of this game feels exceptionally well balanced in such a way that you always have just enough resources and time to set up a defense that is just barely able to hold back the hordes. There is never a dull moment while you are playing. Not once will this game bore you, with some slight exceptions. It also helps that there is a large variety of roles that the villagers can play, and thus a wide variety of ways to approach each stage. God, what a sentence. For example, while you have your straightforward units such as the woodcutter with his rapid close quarters attacks, or your healing shamans, you can also use more specialist roles such as the sorcerers, who summon a wind god for a one-time use wind button, or the ninja, who does not need to be commanded and can teleport around the map and can attack both ground and air-based enemies. There are others too that allow you to either aggro the enemies directly towards one of the villagers, or some that shoot fireworks to rapidly deplete the resist gauge of an enemy, which will stun them if fully depleted, and deal an insane amount of damage. But while there is a variety of roles you can use if you want to, I feel like there's some roles that are simply better suited for boss stages instead of the regular tower defense stages. It's not like they feel like they just don't fit into the game, with the exception of the boss fights. No, it felt more like they were purpose-built for boss fights, if that makes sense. They all also have their own upgrades, which do slightly change their appearances every other upgrade, which just makes them look cooler. But not everything about the villagers is perfect. For one, them not being able to chip the enemy resist gauge from the get-go is kind of a blunder, due to some of the enemies being very tanky. Even if it was just a little bit, it would already be alright, but the investment needed to get them to actually deal a non-insignificant amount of resist damage is, in my opinion, a little too high. It is not unreasonable, but it made the boss fights rather frustrating at times, and it is a little dissonant when you look at how the villagers act with their exaggerated swagger, though that is probably more just for fun rather than an actual representation of their combat capabilities. Now let's take a look at who these volunteers are up against. The Seethe come in even more variety than the villagers, with a total of 30 different Seethe, of which 11 are boss Seethe. Most fulfill different roles which can and will be hard counters to your villagers' roles. Take for example the Guzaiman. This upside down head with what looks like alveoli strapped to where their necks would be will shoot out ranged explosive balls and will stay far away from any and all non-ranged villagers, thus being able to take out your melee units with no issue if left unchecked. Or the Nodorabo, which I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing that right, which is a giant Seethe with a bell on its head that will eat up any and all damage dealt by ranged combatants while preventing damage from reaching other Seethe until your melee units surround it and hit its only damageable point on its back. Alternatively, the Inenra will disable the player's command ability and then hide somewhere, preventing you from controlling the villagers for as long as possible. Which may not sound too bad, but it can get pretty dicey if you misplace one of your units. None of the Seethe are small fries. Even the actual small fries. They all play a role, whether it be tearing down your traps and defenses, to sneaking past them to get some small but devastating hits in on Yoshiro. However, as dangerous as the regular Seethe can be, they don't hold a candle to the Festering Seethe. The Festering Seethe are the boss battles in this game. These mauling creeps are some of the most annoying parts of the game. Not only are they damage sponges, but they also have unreasonably strong resist gauges, especially when you start the game, as you like most of the ways to actually deplete that gauge, which means they will attack you non-stop. Their fights are rarely fun and don't really feel as well tested as the regular stages. It's not like I thought they were broken or imbalanced, as I did manage to beat the time trial on nearly all of them, but they just felt off. And I think at least one of them has an attack that will hit Yoshiro no matter what, unless you kill it fast enough. However, there's one exception. One boss fight that genuinely made me cope and seethe myself. It is the New Game Plus exclusive boss fight against the Cursed So. Unlike most other fights, which are usually over in up to 5 minutes, Cursed So took me at least an hour or two. Why is that? Well, mainly because it is a mirror match in which your mirror has none of the balance drawbacks that you have. They have all special abilities and can trigger them in quick succession. Your bow that can shoot one charged shot after a somewhat lengthy charge time? Yeah, Cursed So can shoot 3 different bow shots back to back that deal so much damage that one is straight up a one-shot, the other can one-shot if you're not at full health, and the last one can have her teleport to you to ruin your day. This happens a lot, and it isn't even the final phase of the battle yet. In the final phase, she will spawn a protective bubble on top of herself and a duplicate at the same time while firing arrows at you. It is an overwhelming fight, and the only fight that felt enjoyable because as much as I hated that one-shot bow she kept killing me with, I knew I could dodge into the shots to avoid certain death. If she got close to me, I knew I had to avoid her lengthy combos and deplete her resist gauge with my heavy attack whenever her back was turned. It was an exhilarating fight because here, at least, it genuinely felt like the times that I failed were genuinely my fault, unlike with, let's say, Muka de Joro, which again I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, the centipede boss fight where the entire body just turned into a nigh unavoidable hitbox. What was also a standout for the Cursed So fight was the arena. Unlike the other boss stages, this one looked really cool with the constantly moving kaleidoscopic patterns giving the feeling of an otherworldliness, as such symmetry could not yet be achieved by humans of that time period. At least I think. And this standout feeling honestly goes for most stages in this game, with the exception of the boss stages. They're all intriguing combat puzzles you need to solve, with standouts being the boat fights and the stages in which So is locked into his spirit form and has to commandeer the villagers. The regular stages are genuinely so engaging that whenever they were broken up by a boss fight, I groaned just wanting to get back to the tower defense aspect of the game. A very obvious thing if you look at the game is also the vulgar yet beautiful art direction. The yokai aren't dull looking, the stages don't just look desolate and run down, but instead they're all vibrant and intriguing to look at. A lot of thought has gone into almost every detail of this game, be it the literally mauling Gaki type Seethe looking like old desiccated men, to the beautiful but haunting looking Nanamagari with its neon coloration, to the colorful explosions whenever you purge a defiled place, to the candy, and so on and so forth. It is truly a sight to behold, and the studio knew that they did a tremendous job as they even put in a model viewer and beautiful paintings for almost everything you find in Kunitsu Gami. So here you have a massive game development studio in Capcom risking tons of funding, time and manpower on a brand new IP that has no name recognition, is in a niche as hell genre with it being a tower defense game, and steeped in a mythology that is very opaque to non-Japanese people with enemy designs that look genuinely bizarre. This game could not have had a harder time attracting players. In fact, all of this kind of just goes to show that this game must have been a labor of love for the studio, which you can feel while playing the game. And, you know, it's also great to see that this game sold 500,000 units. Kunitsu Gami oozes with style and attention to detail. It is both disgusting and beautiful. Everything has a flair to it, be it the streaks left behind by your sword swings, the subtle dancing to the drums of the villagers, or the pose that So strikes after perfect parrying an attack. The sorcerers, I have mentioned before, even get their own cutscene when they summon their origami god of the wind, and go right back to chanting while having a beam of light shining on them. The game goes an extra step when it really didn't need to, creating an unforgettable experience that you cannot get enough of. It is simple in its concept, but so complex in its execution, and hooks you if you give it a chance. It manages to do what a lot of newer IPs nowadays fail to do. It is simply good old fun. So, if you haven't played it yet, what possesses you to stay away from this game?